TSN hockey insider and our insider is Darren Dreger. Morning, Dregs.
Oh, Cardinals.
Go Cards.
Yeah. You know what? Until this popped up and I looked into the camera, I had no idea that's what I was wearing.
That's what you're wearing?
No idea. I have no idea where I got it from. It clearly is a gift. It's not the hat I thought I put on my head when I got going this morning.
Well, it's probably one of those things you go to Phoenix on a trip and you're golfing or something and your hair is all, I need a hat. So just take that hat. Sure. Then you don't use it again for 5 years.
Actually, now that you say that, that's pretty much what happened. It wasn't me. It was my wife, Holly, went to Arizona with her sisters like a year ago. And I think she brought this hat back. So
there you go.
Anyway.
Well, it looks good.
Yeah, it's good.
Now, do you guys compartmentalize your hats? Like black hats over here? No?
No,
I just have like power rankings of the things I like. Nothing to do with colors.
Yeah, see, I stack them. I have gray, I have white, I have black, I have blue, and that's how I go about. It doesn't necessarily always have to match with the rest of the ensemble, but it's kind of nice to have the black shirt and the black hat.
It does. Well,
that's an insider's brand right there, by the way. You see how organized he is? Holy shit.
It's working for you, for sure. I don't know how deep we would get into Connor Zary talk with you necessarily, but we were just kind of kicking it around. The Flames finally, maybe isn't the right word. The Flames have a young forward that people are excited about. He's going to need a contract. And now well, what do you pay him? And you don't want to pay him too much because you've been in the desert without prospects forever. Oh, this is the one guy we've got. Give him $9 million. You don't want to see him leave after a year because you were too afraid to sign him long-term. Shit, here we are again. Another guy leaving town. It's trying to figure out what Connor Zary is and what he's worth.
Well, and so let me throw it right back to you guys, because you're right. You talk about this a lot more frequently than I would. Give me a comparison as to who Connor Zary reminds you of as a developing young NHL player, because in essence, that's what it boils down to, right? The agent is going to take his collection of comps. This is his production game by game as compared to this guy's production, who a year ago signed a similar contract. Here's what we got in term and value. And then Conroy and the Flames are going to come back and go, well, no, we see him more as this, and that's more of an arbitration issue than it is a negotiation of a contract. But all contracts negotiated, unless you're the elite of the elite, are based on what the last guy in a similar role did at a similar age. So is there anyone that comes to mind?
It's really what guys that talk about it every day should do. Find some comparables, go through the draft, see what contracts guys.
Zary's coming out. I said Hagel, but I don't know if that's even.
And Hagel's a winger too, and Zary's been playing down the middle here, so that might change things a bit. I don't know.
Wow. And again, given the need, it's also about where you're at, who you're playing with, and the opportunity that you have in front of you. But that cuts both ways. That's just not, Calgary looking at Connor Zary and say, hey, we appreciate what you do. We appreciate your versatility. But we've also given you an opportunity. I mean, Zary's looking at it and going, okay, wait, I get this. But we know that you're also in the market for a center. Well, I can play center. I'm more than capable of filling a need that publicly and evidently the Calgary Flames need. So I think he's in a wonderful spot. And there's really nothing negative about this, unless you get into the heavy lifting of the negotiation and the representatives of the Zary camp go, okay, well, we want him paid X number more than you think. And then both sides dig in. And there's no indication that that's actually what's going to transpire.
The sort of lost in the desert thing, like the glass of water in the desert, God, it's the best water you've ever had. Like, he's a half point per game player. It's not like we're talking about Mishkov or Celebrini here, but he does a lot of really important things well. He defends well. He can play multiple positions. He's not been given the most blessed line mates. He's working with Kuzmenko, who's like lost at sea right now, and Coleman, who's a good third liner, but he seems to be able to guy who can drive his own line.
The offense that he's providing is much of his own doing.
Yeah.
It's his creating that's leading to the goals and the points.
Yeah. But that's valued, right? Like he deserves appreciation for that. And the expectation is that he's going to continue to deliver, and he's going to continue to grow offensively and defensively. And he's going to be a player that the Calgary Flames want to be part of the organization for, a significant time to come. But, let's see how it all plays out. We're still early in the year, and this is what we do, right? You look at contracts and you look at those that need attention, and then you start to, kind of almost predict where they're going to finish, based on X number of games throughout the regular season. But I'm sure there's a healthy appetite to keep this young guy in the fold.
Yeah, there's no question they like him. It's just,
yeah,
geez, we could only get him for 3 if we bridge him, but then he might be 10 when he comes out on the other side and the cap's 110 million.
But that's okay too, though, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That happens all the time. And more of these young players have the intestinal fortitude now to bank on themselves, to bet on themselves coming out of a bridge. But that's the risk that you take with the organization. That's why, to go over to another Western Conference team in Winnipeg, where there was, so much consternation inside that market. Why don't they sign Cole Perfetti to a long-term deal? Well, because they weren't convinced at the time that Cole Perfetti was going to play out the way that maybe the fan base thinks he might. So you offer that 2-year bridge. Perfetti says, no problem. But just so you know, I'm going to be everything that my agent said I was going to be plus, and you're going to have to pay me at the end of it. And teams are okay with that as well. It just opens the window a little broader to get a better glimpse of what that player is going to be when he's fully developed.
JT Miller back for Vancouver last night. I was just looking at the ice time, 14 and change. He had a pair of assists, a big win for Vancouver over Florida. I love the clip earlier in the week, or maybe it was last week, of Rick Tocchet when somebody asked about Elias Pettersson. You guys love talking about Petey.
That was Farhan. It was sensational.
You just got to ask about Petey all the time. You guys can't help yourself.
It's
so good.
Yeah.
Leave him alone.
Yeah. Nice shot in the arm. Great to see JT Miller's seemingly all good and all
Demko back Tuesday as well.
Demko back, so maybe coming around here. Not that they were falling behind, but great news for Vancouver.
No, Boomer, like 2 massive trades. That's probably what it feels like. Less so with JT because he went on leave of absence, and even though the club was respectful of his time, they knew that he'd be back sooner than later. He had a physical ailment. Mentally things were a little tough for him. So he just had to hit the reset button, and he's done that. And, I know in talking to people there that he was excited to be coming back. Well, and an excited and an engaged JT Miller is a problem for the teams that he plays against because, he drags them into the fight when he's playing the game the way he can play the game. And that's why Team USA named him to their 4 Nations team. It would have been easy for them to go, he's not having a very good year, taking leave of absence. I don't know. No. They know what they're going to get from JT Miller. And the bigger trade value comes in Thatcher Demko because, I do a show in Vancouver on a weekly basis as well. And every single week, any idea, any update on Thatcher Demko? When's he coming back? Is he, all of this stuff. And it felt like they had been kind of getting his reps up for the last several weeks. He had bizarre sort of weird injury, so I guess it took the time that it needed. But I'm now interested to see how this thing pushes forward for the Canucks. And just back to the comment that Tocchet made in response to Farhan, who was asking about, Pettersson, but it was more in, okay, Miller's been out, but Elias Pettersson has taken on, sort of the offensive role here. And, Talk was just more upset as he clarified towards the end that they're trying to trick him. It's an old media trick, right? Like you keep asking about the same guy, but you're kind of hoping that the head coach takes the bait, and now he's more critical of that player as opposed to being complimentary.
When he's struggling, he's gonna float his boat a little bit.
Sure.
Now maybe he'll just talk him now.
You're trying to get me to say something negative, and I'm just not going to do it. So I apologize for not answering the question the way you want, but he's a wily old veteran, man. I got all day long for coaches who want to spar with their media.
Yeah. And I don't know, what did you think of the DeBrusk ad in the summer when he went to Vancouver? There was some talk he was maybe in conversation with the Flames, and I believe that was to a certain extent true. He goes to Vancouver, he scores. He's got 14 and 28. He's
most of them since the beginning of November. He did nothing in October.
Yeah, he's settled in nicely there.
Nice ad for Vancouver. I mean, he's just an all-around good player. You look at the physicality he can provide. He can help you on the power play. He can score 5. All the things that he brings. I think above all else, he needed a fresh start. He needed a change. And, Some tough love in Boston during the early days of Jake DeBrusk's developmental years. And he was an impactful player for them. But just when they turned the corner and things started to go in a different direction, he earned the right to go to the market. And I'm sure he would have been open to the idea of signing a big contract and staying in Boston, but it just felt like he and maybe his family needed a change. So I'm glad for him. Again, the individual stories that we often cheer for. Here's a player who, when he's on, especially in the playoffs, when he's on his game, look out, because he 100% can be a difference maker.
I mean, Boston can be tough on some young players. We were talking about Joe Thornton.
Hamilton,
a few weeks
again.
Go down the list. Lots of them.
You look at that, it's like, because all you remember is, he's maybe on the trade market. He was going to be traded from Boston forever. Oh, they're not going to give him a long-term deal. They're going to bridge him. 27 goals, 19, 25, 27, 19. Yeah. It's not like this guy was a dog for them. He was a pretty good player, but just never, for whatever reason, tough on him there.
Yeah, but isn't he a Rick Tocchet kind of guy? And not just because he can be hard-nosed. He's very coachable, right? And, most coaches in today's NHL, they shouldn't have to tell you to do something 3 times. By the 3rd time of reminding you, they get a little pissed off. And I think that we can appreciate that's not the case with Jake. As long as you give him the opportunity that he now has in Vancouver, and, he had to earn in Boston. It's not like he was a lower level player with the Boston Bruins. Very coachable, which is exactly the type of guy. If you're willing to play the game that Rick Tocchet is asking you to play, and he doesn't have to remind you of what that is on a day in and day out basis, you're going to get rewarded with ice time and playing higher up in the lineup. And that's been the case for Jake.
San Jose Sharks win again. They beat St. Louis. 2 goals, 1 assist for Celebrini, who's now got 10 goals and 19 and 20. Was injured to start the year. I mean, this is not that you don't sleep on the first overall pick, but it was Goofy Noodles, who was one of the first guys, said, this Celebrini guy, I mean, I'm not saying he's better than Bedard, but there's some people who are saying this guy might be better than Bedard. This is a generational talent that maybe didn't get the press he deserves.
Well, sorry, our post-game show last night, the comp was made, like, Bedard's a very different type of player. Like Celebrini is more the 200-foot, where Bedard's your lethal finisher, right?
Yeah. And look, I mean, not that Connor Bedard isn't this type of player. You're right. I agree 100%. He plays a different type of game. Macklin Celebrini will do just about anything. He's not afraid to go into the tough spots. He'll dig for pucks in corners. He's got a passion, and I guess most players do, right? Like, you're not playing in the best league on the planet if you don't, have that gumption and willingness to just play emotionally. But Celebrini is one of those kids where I think they literally have to kick him out of the building. Okay, you've been here for 8 hours. Can you just go home? And
that was Rhett's problem.
I couldn't. I would never.
That was the bar.
If that beer fridge isn't empty, I'm not leaving.
Well, I don't know that he does that, because he grew up in a pretty healthy and rigid family, I think, with his dad being what he is in the NBA. But hey, I also love the stories, especially when you look at players internationally. I mean, who expected Macklin Celebrini to be on the Four Nations team? Nobody. Connor Bedard, I mean, we talked about it early, but he kind of played himself out of that conversation. But I love when you get young guys like this that show the response that Celebrini is showing, whereby now you've got Hockey Canada brass going, okay, like, young, Olympics, we're happy. Yeah, for sure.
Like, and that's why I'm stunned they don't bring their 13th guy, their 7th defenseman, their 3rd goalie is a young guy. Like, this is your training camp for the Olympics next year.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I guess they feel like his training ground is the National Hockey League, and he's got nothing ahead of him but opportunity in San Jose, to play the minutes and do all that he has to do. And based on what they're seeing now, I don't think that there's a show of regret here. It's more of eager anticipation for what he's going to look like a year from now when you are in that Olympic conversation.
And it's weird. Bedard's kind of taking some bullets here. Like, I look at the quality of teammate around him, and I think he'd happily switch spots with Celebrini. Like, they finally called up Frank Nazar, who's been lighting up the A. That's a high-end prospect for Chicago. But, like, you got to give him someone to work with here. Like, who is he playing with? Like, is there someone with high hockey IQ that you can put with Bedard? Please.
Well, and look, there are some smart players there, but not capable of playing at the pace that he needs to play at. And you look at some of the lethal combinations around the league, and the special players that feed off one another. I guess I think of Marner and Matthews because I see them so often in Toronto, but it's more along the lines of a duo, and we know this, right? Like, coaches will put lines together based on a tandem, not on a trio. If you got 3 guys that complement each other, well, then you've got something special. You have 2 guys that complement each other, you can work with that, and they're good players, and they're going to be productive players. And you see that more often than not with some of the stars in the game. And frankly, that's on management of the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, I get why they tried. I'm a huge Foligno family guy. I just am. Marcus, the way he plays. Nick is a warrior, has been throughout his entire NHL career. Taylor Hall, I mean, you get the good, the bad, and the ugly. That comes along with where Taylor Hall is at in his game. But you look beyond that, and there just isn't enough there to complement. And not just up front, just throughout the lineup. Just simply getting Connor Bedard the puck where he needs to get that puck is a challenge for the Chicago Blackhawks. So that's on management right now.
We were talking earlier this week, watching Mikko Rantanen do what he does. He's 4th in league scoring, 43 points in 31 games, is an impending UFA. And you brought up Mitch Marner's having a pretty good season, and he's a UFA. And I know it's different there because he's been far more embattled in Toronto than Rantanen certainly has.
Yeah.
What's if I'm a fan, I'm in a little bit of panic mode. Maybe what are you hearing, or what's to be expected? Is just nothing to see here when it comes to both of those guys? Certainly Marner will be a different story, but what about Rantanen with no contract for next year?
Yeah, for the moment it's quiet, but quiet doesn't mean there's no communication. I mean, Chris McFarland did some pretty nice work in overhauling his entire goaltending department. So there's a GM that isn't sitting back and waiting Mikko Rantanen and Mike Liut and Andy Scott and all the great people who represent him. He's not just sitting back and waiting and saying, okay, well, you bring whatever you want, and we'll just sign off and away you go. What's curious to me, so I guess my point is there's always ongoing conversation at that level of player. There just is. Is it hard negotiating? No, not necessarily. I think what you're getting, though, is more and more players are willing to push it right to, if they have to July 1st. And more, I'm kind of going to that side. Now, it comes with some risk. But when you talk about Marner, you talk about Mikko Rantanen, you're talking about special players. Like, it's not like the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to say, well, if you're not willing to sign this contract extension, then you're walking. You're going somewhere else on July 1st. So forget about retiring the Maple Leaf, trying to win a Stanley Cup with the Maple Leafs, having a statue built outside the building. Forget about that. That's not going to be real. You're cutting bait. No, that's not the way it works. And I would understand, like, what's the going rate for Mikko Rantanen? I have Mikko Rantanen higher than Mitch Marner, slightly higher than Marner. Now, I get you have human salary caps and Nathan McKinnon in Colorado and Austin Matthews, I guess, in Toronto. Why would that matter? It shouldn't matter.
Different cap.
It's a different cap. Your percentage of what you've earned of that cap is no different. So what is that percentage? Is it 12%, 13%, 14%, whatever that number is? I confidently would say that Mikko Rantanen on the open market is probably getting $14 million.
Leon just got 14. I put them in the same category. They're
absolutely in the same category.
Finishers, huge, dominant players, and they're next to superstars.
And maybe he gets more if he's willing to go to a team that isn't as deep or as good as Colorado, where he's not going to have the same opportunity to win. And that's what you're negotiating with when you're negotiating with Colorado or Toronto. Toronto hasn't won anything. Colorado has, right? So I still feel it's more likely those guys stay with their respective teams, but these teams are going to have to buck up. These players have earned it, and these teams are going to have to pay.
Yeah, McKinnon makes 12.6. He ain't going to be the highest paid player on that team. Mikko's leaving way too much money on the table if he signs for
way too much.
And then we just talked about it. Like, what would Chicago pay to get a guy like that to play next to Bedard? Like, Give him 60. Who cares? Like,
and whatever it takes.
Like, honestly, like they're so hungry to be good and they're so far away. Like, bring that guy in at whatever it costs.
Yeah. Now, is it different than just because we were talking about Zary at the start of this, with Draisaitl being a center and Rantanen's a wing? Does that change that number at all, or is it once you're
maybe
UFA and you're a dominant?
Maybe marginally, but again, he's a proven winner, and I just try and imagine what, like, we know Nathan McKinnon runs hot, which I love about him. Like, he's not afraid to give it to Jared Bednar. He's not afraid to tune up his teammates. He's not afraid to go after the officials. When his wires touch, man, he goes off. But that's part of, again, what makes him such a dynamic and impactful superstar. You take a piece like Mikko Rantanen out of that equation, and now you're negatively influencing McKinnon and everyone else around the Colorado Avalanche. So I can't imagine he moves out of there. I can't.
So there's terrible problems to have. Well, we've got McCarr and we've got McKinnon and we've got this guy who's top 5 in league scoring. We're going to have to pay all these guys. Huh?
Yeah.
So it's awful.
Tough.
Way easier in Buffalo. I don't have to worry about this shit.
Well,
well, they did back in the day, but those players just they wouldn't sign and wouldn't stay. So they traded them away or got rid of them.
What, we're a week removed from all the Ranger stuff? That felt like it was really loud. Was it only 7 days ago? Like
not
Trouba
that long.
and all, like there's still been. I don't think all the issues are gone now, Dregs. What
No.
are you hearing and seeing there?
Nah, I mean, Drury has to be open for business. I mean, he alleviated some cap issues by moving Trouba to the Anaheim Ducks, but the response has been nothing but a thud in New York. It really has been, right?
Chicago beat him.
I mean, that loss in and of itself is, I mean, it just makes a statement. You know, if you're ownership, and that's a very volatile ownership in New York, you're looking at everything. You're looking at absolutely everything, and that's management, that's coaching, that's the roster, that is everything. I can tell you guys, so we arrive in Florida on the weekend, and we're getting set up for the start of Monday's Board of Governors meetings. And normally these meetings are eye glazing, right? Because you've got the owners and you've got the board, and they're talking about business matters. There were no votes this meeting stretch, so that didn't matter. There was really no change. So we're looking at what looked to be a real boring agenda. And Pierre LeBrun had set up this sit-down interview with Michael Andlauer of the Ottawa Senators just as a feature idea for The Athletic. You know, just sit down and let's get some thoughts from Michael Andlauer. And the owner of the Sen sits down and basically has a notepad of a message that he needs to deliver to everybody out there, especially, he didn't say the New York Rangers. We knew what he was talking about when he threw out the soft tampering. Well, every media person assembled in Florida was just grinning because here we are. Yeah. Rather than talking about, you know, projected salary cap or, oh, geez, can't wait. CBA negotiations are starting soon. We've got this spicy meatball of the one owner calling out the other owner. So, yeah, I mean, that was kind of what it was. So a little bit of turmoil there, but harmony across the NHL, it seems, at this stage.
How's the weather, at least? Did you get some good food? Cocktails?
Lots of good food. The weather was nice. Yeah. It was.
We need you on that beat, right?
No issues. You guys gotta set up shop. Back in the day, it was always well attended, you know, primarily because of the weather. And historically, the general managers meetings, when they had them before the trade deadline, then you had media from all corners of the league there. Now it's always post NHL trade deadline. So only a fortunate few of us still get to attend.
Here last night, we got to watch the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was like a reunion. It's like, oh yeah, these guys still are really good. Oh, there's Kucherov and Gensel's pretty good, I guess. And yeah,
not bad.
Guys are pretty good. It was quite because we talked about it yesterday. Getting ready for the game.
Interrupting it, but the Kucherov back check then set up for the goal.
Yeah.
Is almost something every kid fan should watch, right? Because they don't have to play that way.
No,
kind of earned the right to maybe not play that way.
That guy specifically, right? Yeah,
that way. And it was it's, I don't know what to say about it. And you give him credit for it. But to me, it was just such an example of, so you want to be somebody, do you?
Yeah, I find him to be arguably the most interesting player in the league. And I mean, it's pretty obvious at times he's been the most dominant player in the league, but he, we're drawn to the score sheet because normally that's where he dominates the most. But Rhett, that's a perfect illustration of the fire that burns in that belly, in that man's belly, because all he wants to do is win. So it's being the example that the younger players around the Tampa Bay Lightning are now going to have to follow. It's giving John Cooper, more ammunition to put you out there in every single circumstance. We often rave about Anthony Cirelli and the fact that, if John Cooper had another child, he would simply adopt Anthony Cirelli because he loves him so much. But there are so many different facets to Kucherov's game. We're showing that defensive prowess. And again, just the will to take apart an offensive play here. The goals are obvious. The assists are obvious. Sneaky, dirty dude too. He catches you not paying attention, or he knows you got a soft spot in the wrist area or behind the knee or whatever. He'll just glance over. The official's not looking. Boom. You get one right in the back of the knee. I love the way Nikita Kucherov plays.
If he's in a Canadian market, think about how big Matt Sundin won. He was a very good player. He's nowhere near Kucherov level, and it was like he's a god walking around this. Imagine if Kuch is in Montreal or Toronto or Chicago. It's wild.
Yeah, he's an all-timer, because even when you watch that play, when he's back checking, it's not like he's skating 100 miles. He's right there. He plays it kind of almost a sneaky high speed, and he's so smart. He doesn't have to bust his ass like so many other guys. And he made the defense. He made everybody on the ice. How many Flames were there on the ice? 4, 5. All of them look foolish. Thank you, Nikita Kucherov.
It's a chess master.
Hey, and plus, look, when you're comfortable enough in your masculinity, as most NHL players are, where you can go tarps off at a Stanley Cup, media availability. Yeah,
that was a sober decision. Right?
I was trying to, because who did they beat that year? Because remember, he was kind of chirping the fans. Oh, you guys still cheering?
Montreal.
Or what's
I
going
think it was
on?
Montreal.
No shirt on, drinking a Bud Light or whatever he had there. It's like, this guy's, it's his world. We're living in
the real deal.
Yeah, this guy's pretty good. Well, good luck to the Cardinals this weekend. I know you're a huge fan.
Big game.
And we'll talk to you next week.
Okay, boys, have a great week.
You too. Appreciate you. There's Darren Dreger, TSN Hockey Insider on the Crystal Waters Insider Hotline.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long-form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.